So yeah. So Hat in Time. What do we actually want from Hat in Time? I know I talked a little bit about this when I was looking at Yooka-Laylee, but I mostly was comparing it to Yooka-Laylee, but what is it actually, if we look at Hat in Time in a vacuum, what is it that we actually want from the game? So the thing that we want is obviously to have an amazing 3D platformer. That's the genre we're looking at, 3D platformers, right here on... can you even see my mouse? No, it doesn't actually capture my mouse. Wait a second. It actually says capture cursor and as a... I checked capture cursor, why is it not capture cursor? Whatever, doesn't matter. So, what is actually the point behind a 3D platform? I think we need to take a look at that first before we actually take a look at why it's very important. Actually, let me check if the sound quality is alright. I know it's weird that you can see this on screen as well, but I'm going to have to do with it. Okay, there we go. So, what do we actually want from a 3D platformer? The reason why we like 3D platformers is because what we want from a game is we want to be able to run around through an open world. It doesn't have to be completely open, but at least to have levels, parts of stages that seem open in themselves. We want to be able to run around them and jump around them and do all sorts of platforming in these worlds, because if the movement capabilities that we have are very fun, then running around in this 3D world becomes very fun. That's pretty much the center, the core of what makes 3D platformers great. If running around and jumping around and just moving through the stage is very fun, that's what we want from a 3D platformer. That makes 3D platformers in general fun. So why was, for example, Super Mario 64 fun? Super Mario 64 was a great game because you had a bunch of different movement options, you had different buttons that did different things. You didn't just have jump. If you had just jump, it wouldn't have been that interesting, but you could also dive, you could punch, you could grab things, do stuff with that. You had control over your camera to make sure that you always had the correct camera angle. You could switch between two camera modes even to accomplish that. So you were possible to move through this world of Super Mario 64 in different ways, depending on what the situation was, because you had different abilities that you could use. You had control of your camera, and because of all of those things, it was fun to move around all of these different areas. It was fun to move around the stages of Super Mario 64. On top of that, you have different tasks that you can do, and the tasks are all tied into how you move or what your capabilities are. You're capable of picking up an object, of throwing it. You're capable of ground pounding, for example. So for example, there could be, or there is, a star where you have to ground pound on the stump that's holding down the chain chomp. So you do that and then you get a star for it. That's a way of applying your movement in a task. But the thing is, it's not the task itself that makes the game fun, it's the capabilities of you being able to fulfill these tasks within the game that make the game fun. That's at least my look at it. And so what we actually end up with, if we look at why 3D platformers become great, not just good, but also great, is because all these different ways that we have of controlling our characters also are tied together with all the different tasks that we can complete. There's a synergy here between the movement that we have, our abilities, and the tasks that we can do. It's very important, very important. And on top of that, you also have another layer, which is the world in itself. If the world looks cool, because if in a platformer, the world pretty much dictates what the gameplay is gonna be. If there's a platform, that means you're gonna have to jump on top of it, jump away from it. The gameplay is dictated by what the world looks like. If you look for it, for example, in an FPS, for most FPS, the actual world doesn't matter too much. Like, of course, it becomes very important where, if you look at Call of Duty, for example, it becomes important where you can hide, where enemies can hide, where enemies can pop out, where enemies can walk to, and stuff like that. But the actual gameplay is still, you put your reticle over where they are, or where they're gonna go if you have something that has travel time, and then you press the button to shoot. But in a platformer, if the world is just a little bit different, suddenly all the different actions that you were gonna take, are you gonna jump, are you gonna dive, are you gonna do a double jump here, all of those different choices that you're gonna have to make, they become very different. So you also need to take a look at what the world does. That also becomes very important. So taking a look at, I think these are like 3 important aspects, like the gameplay in a core aspects of moving through the stage, then how moving through the stage works together with all the different tasks that you have to do, and of course the stage itself. I think those are like the 3 most important aspects of a game. And if you look at, for example, what Banjo-Kazooie did, hey Kamaru, how's it going? I'm just passing time until the game launches by rambling. Look at Banjo-Kazooie, for example. If you look at Banjo-Kazooie, what did Banjo-Kazooie do well in these 3 aspects? Moving around was really fun. You had really great abilities. You could roll, you could just walk, you could jump and flutter, you could do the talent trot. Oh, what a great ability the talent trot was. You could fly. There were many different ways you could move about the stage depending on the situation, and it also tied into the tasks. All the different tasks that you were doing in that game required you to use the knowledge that you had of your abilities in a certain way. You needed to apply your knowledge of your abilities in a certain way to get all the different puzzle pieces in that game, and it got progressively more complex as the game went on. At the start, you get a puzzle piece just by standing in a specific place while Conga throws some oranges. It just needs you moving around in order to get that puzzle piece. Just the control stick alone was enough. Then there's another one where all you needed to do was you needed to stomp down on some of these huts. Also very simple, but you still needed to apply the knowledge that you had of the gaming mechanics in a certain way in order to get that puzzle piece, or jigsaw piece, or just jiggy, doesn't matter. And then we get more complex. So for example, in what do we have? In Rusty Bucket Bay, there's a puzzle piece, or a jiggy, where you have to dive down beneath the water, which is now more dangerous because it's oily water, so the swimming has been ramped up as well. You need to swim down, you need to find Snorkel, talk to Snorkel, then do some precision diving. Okay, precision, not that precise, but still, you need to dive into the side of the ship where the anchor was from. You need to kill some enemies with different attacks. You could use the same, but whatever. You need to use some attacks to kill the enemies all the way to the other side. You need to stomp down on the anchor, and there were some notes you needed to collect in there. You go all the back out, you needed to dive back down again, and then you needed to dive and get the puzzle piece and the jigsaw jiggy, and then make it up towards the land again before you drowned. It was a lot more complex. Even if you just said, okay, majority of that is diving, it's still not just diving, it required diving in a bit of an advanced way. And that's one of the aspects that made Banjo-Kazooie great. It gradually made sure that all the different aspects that you were used with playing the game became used more and more in junction with each other and in a more difficult ways to get more jiggies. But it never really got too difficult. It never got bullshit. It always stayed grounded. That was very important. Another part was the world itself was also very well designed. The world of Banjo-Kazooie, it was done so well. If you like, what I always say about level design is, it's really awesome if you can make a level that's simple in the way, if you were to have someone explain how the world works and they give you very simple direction how the world is built. Like, okay, you start on a hill, there's a lower side on the hill where there's a little bit of a pond with a bridge over it, there's an upper side of the hill with 2 areas where you can get new moves, and in the middle of that hill there's a termite hill. Very simple stage, very simple stage. You have the hillsides that connect the 2 places. Very simple stage. But then you can keep going more into detail and add more stuff to that without breaking the simplicity behind it. And that's, I think, a really great part about creating places. You were totally on point, Kamaru. They were small but creative and smart. Because they were simple and small, but they had intricacies to them. They had certain amounts of complexity to them, even though the basic idea behind them was very simple. So in that stage that I just described with the hills, the termite hill inside has this special tasks where you have to get up by transforming into a termite, and otherwise you could not get very far. You had the 2 hillsides where you learned the 2 moves, but on those hillsides, for example, you have Juju, the totem pole that spins around, where you have to shoot eggs in, but you can, if you just shoot it like twice, you can get on top of it and then collect an empty honeycomb for your diligence and observance? What's the word? Yeah, whatever. So there was some intricate stuff going on, but like I said, the basic idea, it's a small and simple stage, and it kept continuing throughout the entire game. Rusty Bucket Bay is still a fairly small and simple stage. You have a ship in the middle with different entrances and where you can get inside the ship, and some stuff around the ship, and then you have surrounding the entire dock or bay or whatever it is. It's a bay because it's Rusty Bucket Bay. You have the outside areas where you can walk around in a big circle around the entire outside, and then you have the water. Pretty simple stage, but inside the ship you have the engine room where there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of different stuff. You have the weird boss fight that you have to do where you have to drop the exploding box onto the ship and then it blows up, and then you can go into the ship and fight the big boombox boss fight. There's a lot going on, but the basis of that stage is very simple, and I think that's what made Banjo-Kazooie stages really good. And to put it in one word, focus. Banjo-Kazooie stages were very well focused. That's what made Banjo-Kazooie stages great. To some degree, SM64 stages are the same, where they're also fairly small and simple, but focused, and that's the important part, focused. Now, if you look at some of the newer games, for example, where you have, for example, I'm just gonna name it. You all know it. You all knew it was coming in the chat. People were already talking about it. Yes, exactly. Freeze Me. Why will Freeze Me, even the first stage in Freeze Me, was really big, and I couldn't really figure out where stuff was until I was walking around it multiple times. The stage wasn't actually quite that simple. Like, I know there was a hill with a boss on top of it, and there was a bit of a castle building on the other side, but it becomes a bit hard to say in just a few words what the overall structure of that stage was. There's a bit of a pond on the side, and then just the area that you start in when you enter the stage, I don't know, it becomes a bit harder to figure out exactly what that stage was. And the actual things that you did in that stage weren't that difficult, but the stage in total was just too big, too expansive, and there was no clear focused concept behind it. And you're also correct, Garrison, that's also why Banjo-Tooie wasn't quite as good. The stages felt a bit too big and empty. And I think another important aspect of Banjo-Tooie was the stages weren't quite as focused when you were moving through the stage. So when you enter the first stage, Mayhem Temple, you notice that there's a lot of different places that you can't go to. And I think that's a really bad feeling when you first go into that stage where 80% of all these different doors are closed. I can't go anywhere. I can go up the hill, but then what? I can't go anywhere else. And it becomes... It's not quite that nice when you know that those different ways that you just have to somehow unlock by doing various tasks. It doesn't feel that great. There's also many different jiggies in that stage that you can't get until you have moves from later in the game. It doesn't feel very nice. It wasn't quite as focused. Similar to Freeze Me, in my opinion. And of course, I'm also gonna have to name it. Yeah, of course, Yooka-Laylee. We're all thinking about it. Yooka-Laylee also... It tried to be focused, but it didn't quite manage to do it just as well. I think the first stage in Yooka-Laylee was alright. The expansion was a bit uninspired. And I think the fifth stage was alright. The fifth stage completely done, I think, was completely fine. It was a great stage. But if you look at, for example, the third stage, that third stage is just way too confusing for it to be a good stage. How can you make a good stage that feels great to play when the stage is just too confusing? You go into that stage, you play through that stage, you still have no idea what's going on. It might have a cool atmosphere, like, oh, I like the color palette, and I like the thematic of the swamp and it being scary. That's cool. But gameplay-wise, I think Swamp Play is just played so badly, in my opinion. I don't know, because like I said, it wasn't, you couldn't figure out the basic idea behind that stage. It took me 20 speedruns of the entire stage to figure out, oh yeah, there's 4 islands, one of which is from expansion, and they are in a square pattern with the octopus building exactly from the other, at the opposite end of the entrance, with there being trees in the middle blocking the view. Left side you have expansion area, right side you have the secondary area with the locks connecting the two of them. It took me a long time to figure that out, that was the basic idea behind that stage, because that stage just didn't allow you to figure out what the idea behind that stage was. I really didn't like that at all. The focus was missing. Now, let's take a look at chat for a second, because I'm rambling way too much. Yeah, backtracking, character switching, FPS shooting, Canary Mary. I liked Canary Mary mostly because I never had a problem with Canary Mary. Even as a kid, I was always really good at Canary Mary. I mean, yeah, if you do a clamp grip like that and then just vibrate a bit, it becomes quite simple. I mean, after that, your entire hand hurts, but you've done it at least, you know? I think Banjo-Tooie was a bit too ambitious, but I still liked the overall idea. Overall, at least Banjo-Tooie felt nice to play. Even the bad stages in Banjo-Tooie felt nice to play. Didn't quite feel that way about Moody Maze Marsh in Yooka-Laylee. It didn't feel nice to play, and that's what I didn't quite enjoy. Now, if you want to take it back to Hat in Time, thanks for the follow, Garrison, by the way. If we take that back to Hat in Time now, for example, what do we want from Hat in Time if we look at all these different aspects? Now, one thing I need to note first before I go into this is that Hat in Time is what I would call like an episodic or an act-based 3D platformer. I almost destroyed for 2 past days. Yeah, that happens. So if you look at Super Mario 64, for example, you have all these different stages, but if you go into a different act, you're always looking for different things. But in Super Mario 64, it's not quite as pronounced as, for example, in Super Mario Sunshine. In Super Mario Sunshine, if you go into a specific act, things could be completely different. There's this one stage, the harbor, I forgot what it was called. That's like the harbor stage where if you go to a specific act, suddenly Shadow Mario is there and he's not there on any other act. Maybe on some acts there's goo in the harbor, but not on other acts. Like, it could be very different what the stage is like depending on different acts. That's different. Also, if you collect a shine sprite, you get booted out of the stage and you have to go back in and like select another act. That's what Hat in Time is like. Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, it's more like, yeah, Ricco Harbor, exactly. Thank you, Garrison. In Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, you go into the stage and then it's more like a playground where it's just like, okay, here are all these different things you can do and you can do whatever you want. No one's gonna tell you in what order you have to do anything in. There might be some place where, like, okay, if you need this jigsaw piece, you need to climb all the way up there, so you need to put more effort in than if you were to get something that was very close to the entrance. So there's different amounts of effort you need to put in, but still, you could do everything in any order. It feels more like a playground, while Super Mario Sunshine feels more like a roller coaster where you have different dips up and downs, and you go through them in a specific order. And yeah, every Act 6 is Shadow Mario, exactly. And if you take a look at these differences, what becomes apparent is that if you design a stage that's meant to be a playground, it's of course going to be extremely different from a stage that's going to have different acts. If you have a stage that have different acts, you can change stuff between the acts if you want to. You can be like, okay, let's flood the entire area. Let's make the entire area completely dry of water. Let's not even drop the guy, let's not even drop the player in the stage. We're going to drop the player somewhere completely different. We can do that as well, drop him somewhere completely different. We're going to spawn different enemies. We can change stuff between areas. We can see in this screenshot right now, this lava in Mafia Town. That's completely unthinkable. What? How is there lava in Mafia Town? That's crazy. I assume it's lava, by the way. It might be something else. It might be, I don't know, orange juice. I have orange juice right here. And so when I did my series where I talked about how the level design of Yooka-Laylee was working, if you look at Yooka-Laylee, first off, when you come into the stage in Yooka-Laylee, it becomes very important to figure out what the stage is like. You need to know what the stage is like. It's not quite as important in Hat in Time or Super Mario Sunshine, because as long as you know where the Shine Sprite is, if you just move toward the Shine Sprite, you're gonna be doing fine. You don't need to know exactly what the entire stage looks like, as long as you know how to get to the Shine Sprite. And because there's a little movie that plays when you go into the stage that shows you, oh, here, we're gonna show you the camera, here's the Shine Sprite. It tells you where the Shine Sprite is, so you can go to the Shine Sprite and have a good time. You don't need to know exactly what the entire stage looks like in order to be able to do that. You can take your time and figure out what the entire stage looks like if you want to, but it's not required. But if you look at something like Yooka-Laylee or Banjo-Kazooie, you need to know what the entire stage is like on a basic level right when you come in for you to have a good time. Because otherwise you're gonna get frustrated, you're gonna get lost, you're gonna feel like you don't know what you're doing, because you don't have this singular goal going into the stage of what you want to do. So now it's still 24 minutes until the game launches, so I'm guessing I'm going to continue rambling. So because of that, when I'm going to take a look at what the Hat in Time levels are like, what I'm going to take a look at for the most part is, do you know what your idea, your goal in that stage is? Do you have a goal? That's going to be very important for me going into a stage. If I go into a stage, I see a timepiece, the camera showing me where the timepiece is, and I have somewhat of an idea on how I get to that timepiece, I'm going to have a good time. If I go into a stage and I have no idea where that specific timepiece is, I might have a bad time. And I think that's something that is going to be different from when I played Yooka-Laylee. And Yooka-Laylee did have some pitfalls concerning that. Imagine if Moody Maze Marsh, for example, was a stage that had different acts. First act, you only have the first island to walk around in. And it shows you at the start, oh, here's the maze. In the maze there's a timepiece. Or not timepiece, but, you know, a pagey. So you come in, you start at the start of the entire area, you know where the maze is because of the camera movement, and then you move through that first island to the maze, do the maze, and be done. Second act, you get dropped on the second island, where it drops you away from the pumping station and shows you, hey, go to the pumping station. And you go, cool, I'm gonna go to the pumping station now and do that. So you could actually make Moody Maze Marsh make sense as an act-based stage, but as a playground stage, it doesn't work because it's too complex and you have no idea what's going on. So that's going to be something to take a look at. So what does Hat in Time need to do actually as an act-based jump and run platformer? As an act-based jump and run platformer, I'm going to make sure that I have a clear path to the timepiece, but at the same time I feel like I have some sort of agency, some sort of freedom of what I can do. I'm gonna be able to choose, where do I go? Am I gonna go this path? I'm gonna go this path. Maybe I'm not gonna go either of those paths. Maybe I'm gonna do something completely different. Maybe I'm gonna look for secrets. I want to have that freedom while still having that goal in my mind. That's what I'm gonna be looking for. Energy drink. But if you have also any more ideas on what to take a look at, of course, tell me in the chat. Also something you can do, which we can see in the video right now, what we can do with the act structure is we can do completely different types of gameplay. We don't just have to walk through a stage and reach a certain task where we just use an ability that we have learned to like open a door or something, and then there's a pagey there. What we can do here is we can say, oh, now the game is a murder mystery. Now the game is you have to collect specific items to unlock a door. Like, what? That's completely different from what we've done before, where we just used a different ability. Now we actually have to traverse the entire stage and collect different stuff. Maybe we have to combine stuff together. We have to fight different enemies in different spots. It's not just go from A to B. Now we have to do different tasks. And that might be different. We could have like a survival horror when we are in the Vanessa stage. We can do really different types of gameplay, and we just say, okay, we confine that specific gameplay to that specific act. We can do that. And then what we can do is we can take a look at that act, and we don't even have to judge it in the same parameters that we judge the rest of the game in, we can say, okay, this act is very different. We're going to judge this specific act in a different way. We can do that. Now we're going to judge this act from the perspective of a survival horror. We can say that, oh, this act is a murder mystery. Let's look at the entire act from the perspective of a murder mystery. And I think if you do it like that, you can also, as a game developer, add a lot more variety to the game, in the way the gameplay works, and yeah, just make it a lot more interesting to play through, because it's not just doing the same thing over and over. It's not just rolling up a hill 50 times, it's rolling up a hill 25 times, then collecting some stuff, then killing some enemies and having a murder mystery, then avoiding some horror monster. It's different stuff all the time, and I think that could also be really interesting. You also have the boss battles as well, but I think actually the boss battles are the point where everything is gonna be similar between the games. Boss battles always function in the same vein, where it's like, okay, just make sure the boss battle feels like, okay, you have to use the abilities that you've learned in a meaningful way. It shouldn't be too obvious how you fight the boss. It should still feel satisfying when you come up with the way on how to beat the boss. It should be a bit challenging, but not too easy. It should feel like you observe the boss. What does the boss do? Come up with your strategy and then use that strategy to defeat the boss. Like, those different aspects. Doesn't really matter if the game is episodic or act focused, or if it's like a playground stage. I think it's still the same when it comes to boss fights, right? Like, boss fights still function under the same way. That said, one thing I need to mention about Super Mario Sunshine, one thing I didn't like about Sunshine is that at the start of Sunshine, I think there are too many boss fights. You start the game, of course I'm gonna speedrun this Komaru, I'm gonna have the speedrun world record for this game at least once at some point. I can guarantee that for any percent, or 100%, for any category. What I want to talk about? Oh yeah, when you look at, for example, the start of Super Sunshine, you start the game off, what do? You fight the sort of piranha plant. Do they even have a name? The sludge piranha plant. You fight that once, it's like a boss fight. After that, you fight another sludge piranha plant, then you fight Shadow Mario, then you go into the stage, you fight another sludge piranha plant, and you go into a stage again, you fight PD Piranha, then you do 2 normal stages, you actually do 2 normal stages, and then it's another PD Piranha plant, and in between that, you unlock another stage, which is another Glob Piranha plant fight. There's so many boss fights actually at the start of Super Mario Sunshine, I really didn't like that. I just thought I'd mention that. I don't think it has anything to do with Hat in Time. I don't think Hat in Time will do anything like that. I just thought I'd mention that. That is something that I thought was really weird at Super Mario Sunshine. It feels like cutscene and in-game time is nice too. Yeah, cutscene skip and in-game time is gonna be so nice. Actually, I'm gonna put up a live split. But I'm gonna say this right now, if the live split doesn't actually matter, where is it? Can we just do a new one? There we go. I'm gonna do this later. But if it has an in-game timer, I'm gonna not use the live split timer, because why would I need a live split timer if I have an in-game timer anyway? But yeah, I'm not gonna use cutscene skip when I'm doing a first playthrough, but I think that's obvious. Yeah, my first playthrough I'm gonna cutscene skip. I would like to, by the way, I would have liked to pass this time right now, to just do this. Go back to screenshots and movies. But as you can see, I can't do the game itself, and I can't do the speedrun stuff, because the speedrun stuff is it's not there anymore. They removed the speedrun build, and they also removed the beta build, so I can't play either of those. I'm just gonna have to wait for it to release, which should be in about 16 minutes if we look at this. Another thing we're going to look at, apart from gameplay and level design, I think level design and gameplay is the most important part, but something to also take a look at is maybe the style and humor. Graphics power-wise, the graphic power behind this game is not very big because I think is it Unity? But this game could have been made like 10 years ago with the same graphics. It doesn't really matter. But not that I really matter. I really don't care about graphics power. You can make great graphics with like graphics power that's 20 years old. I really don't care. What I do care of is why I say instead style. I don't say graphics, I say style. I want the game to have a great style. And thanks for that, Garrison. Personally, I hate my own voice, but I think most people do. Like, most people hate their own voice anyway. I like style, and I think the game does actually have a really nice style. It has this sort of light-hearted, very colorful style with this really like, yeah, you can see it there, this like sort of childish humor that you have going on. Unreal 3, oh, that's actually really nice. I use Unreal 3. That's a cool engine. I really like that style. There's like sort of colorful, poppy, childish style as well. It doesn't really look serious, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be serious. It's not supposed to be serious. I really like the style behind it. Similar to Yooka-Laylee. Yooka-Laylee was also a more like a mischievous style, more like a childish style. I really like that as well. The humor behind it is also pretty good. Like as you can see, that humor where he... Oh, I like that humor. I like the humor behind it in Hat in Time. I would say that Yooka-Laylee is more of like this sort of like British, I don't give a fuck humor, with like really weird puns. Like you have trouser, for example, you have capital B, like it's really punny. It has this really cool like British humor in the not voice acting, but in the text that you can see when the characters talk. And Hat in Time is more about this more like mischievous and more childish humor, I think, in general. And so I would say that humor is a little bit different between the two, but I like both of them. I like the humor in both games. I like the style of both games. And so I would say that style-wise the game is already doing really great. And something that you can add if you have this like mischievous childish style is you can actually add, which is very interesting, you can add more like sinister, more dark tones to the game, like Vanessa, like the murder mystery here, because interestingly enough, stuff like that fits to childish style. It actually fits really well. Like stuff like Vanessa. Like, of course, when we were kids, we really were scared of like the monster under our bed that was haunting us, like Vanessa would be, or we were thinking that, oh, we could be great detectives who solve crimes or whatever. It does fit in, even though it feels like everything's childish. Why is there a murder? And why is there a scary monster? But I think it fits, and I like it. I like the style behind the game, and I think in that sense it already has earned a lot of my personal like points when it would come to rating. I don't usually do like 5 out of 10, 10 out of 10, or just out of 10 ratings, because I think like numbers don't really purvey very well how a game feels like. But if I were to give like points for that, I think it would already gather a lot of points just in case, just in the direction of style and humor, because I really like those two aspects in this game. I also really like the movement mechanics. We got to see the movement mechanics a lot in the speedrun challenge preview, yeah, whatever. You could see the movement mechanics as well, because I think it had actually all the different movement mechanics from the finished game, apart from maybe different types of different types of umbrellas, different types of hats, different types of badges. But the basic idea behind all the different types of movements, they were still already present in the speedrun preview, and they were really fun. I mean, people did like over 500 resets of the speedrun challenge, and they were still having fun playing the game. They were really fun. And Komaru, I do indeed agree that it should have been different between the beta and the full game, because I would have really liked to play the beta again and the speedrun challenge again even after the game is launched. But I actually do like the wall run. 10 more minutes, yeah. I actually do like the wall run. I think the wall run is a cool addition from the beta. Because in the beta, it actually felt really stiff, I would have to say. It felt really stiff how you had to do wall jumps. Because you had to do wall jumps. You had to do a single jump, not a double jump, a single jump toward a wall, jump away from it, and if you wanted to do another wall jump, you had to make sure not to do a double jump. You had to keep not doing double jumps while you wanted to do wall jumps, and as soon as you did a double jump, you couldn't wall jump anymore, and I thought that felt so stiff. It felt really stiff, it was like hampering your movement really much, but I like it a lot more now, where you can do single jump, you can do double jump, you can do a dive, recover, and then hit the wall, and you can also run up the wall just a tiny bit, which is also pretty nice, because now you don't have to aim just exactly for the cliff, not really a cliff, but you don't have to exactly aim for the edge, you can just aim slightly below it, and it gives you more freedom. Something that might be a problem is that maybe it gives you too much freedom. Maybe now you can break the game. But personally, I like it a lot more if you have too much freedom and you can break the game a little bit, than if you have not enough freedom and the game feels stiff. Rather too much freedom than if the game feels stiff. That's my personal opinion, at least. And so I do actually really like that idea behind the movement mechanics and in the sense of how walls work, at least now. So I think walls work perfectly fine now. In general, the fact that you can always dive and do a dive recover, and you can use dive recover as like a third jump, I like that as well. The fact that you have the double jump in general. Every game needs to have a double jump. How can you possibly make a platform without a double jump? So it's good that it's in there, but that's like standard, I would say. I also like the other types of movement that you have, like sliding, the fact that you can, if you dive down a hill, you get really fast and you can dive recover, or if you do a dive and then recover as soon as you hit the ground, you get a bunch of movement speed. I like how you do combat, that you have like this homing aerial attack, but you can just whack your umbrella as well. I like that you can balance on these ropes and then jump off them. Even though that doesn't really do too much, I still like it. I like that you can do the grapple hook. I like pretty much most of the movement mechanics in the game, and so because of that, I do actually like it overall. Like overall, I think the movement mechanics are totally fine in this game. And that's another great piece for a 3D platform, because in order for a 3D platformer to be great, the core gameplay needs to be great. If the core gameplay or the core movement mechanics are shit, the game can't be good. Freeze Me, for example. In Freeze Me, the core movement mechanics just felt stiff. Running around felt really stiff when you were jumping up different platforms, when you were landing from falling, when you were trying to climb up different edges. It felt a bit stiff all the time, and sometimes you would fall down when you didn't think you were gonna fall down, or you inputted something a little bit incorrectly and you were failing because of that, and it felt really bad whenever you ran into those edges in Freeze Me, and as a result, the overall game felt a bit stiff, and I really didn't like that. So, but because we know that the basic movement mechanics in Hat in Time, they totally work fine, I really like that. I really like that. Okay. Is there anything else I want to talk about? Okay, I'm gonna do something very weird in that I'm gonna... the video that I've made just right now, I'm gonna actually upload that on YouTube while I play the game. Which is weird, because I can do that